It's the GP call. He said we've got to go to emergency. Now, I'd had this cough now for a few weeks and it wasn't going away. And I was in the middle of my HSC studying my ass off. I was trying to get into my dream course, medicine, so this was not helping. But in the back of my mind, I knew something else was up. I was sleeping 16 hours a day, yet still feeling tired. When I was training and playing basketball, my legs were feeling like lead within minutes. And everything I ate tasted weird for some reason. Something was wrong, really wrong. I could feel it. And I remember wishing I could sit on that lounge chair and stroke my dog's fur forever. We were rushed straight into emergency and into a bed. When I read my file, it said acute bone marrow failure on the bottom of the page, and I remember that phrase from somewhere, but I couldn't remember exactly where. But I looked at my dad and asked him, "Does that mean leukemia?" His eyes went blank. I still remember them. He was remembering the horror my uncle went through when he was getting treatment for leukemia. And he stayed at our house and he'd physically seen that, and he looked me dead in the eye and he said, "No." The next day I had a bone marrow biopsy, and for the next day after that I was in constant, excruciating pain, but I was wishing, hoping against all hope, that it was anything but that. Then a few hours later, a man I'd never even met before came in and told me, "Nikhil, the good news is you're 17 and you have leukemia. But the bad news is you're 17 and you have leukemia." I was shocked, devastated. I still asked him, "So what are my chances?" 10 to 20% that you'll live the next 5 years. Now I cried for ages. No matter what people around me were saying, no matter how much I tried to think otherwise, I just couldn't stop wondering, what had I done to deserve this? I mean, I was young, I was fit, I ate healthily. I'd never done anything to harm anyone. Why me, of all people? I was only 17. I lay in that bed there, asking myself that for days. But after a while, I started hating that feeling. The constant anger, depression, sadness, the tears on the pillow. I wanted to get out of that, but with chemo coming up and other things like that, all I could see was probable pain, misery, and maybe even death in my future. But then I took a step back and I looked at what had happened to me as if it had happened to someone else. When I did that, all those emotions dropped away and I started seeing and questioning what I was doing and thinking. And I realized then that all those feelings, they were all coming from me, my brain, my mind. I mean, no one can come into your head and make you feel something, right? So why was I doing that? What was it accomplishing? Nothing, other than making me feel worse about myself. I realized then that no matter how bad things may seem, no matter what your circumstances, you will always have a choice on how you view things in life. And from that position, from that step back, making that choice to live life in the most positive, constructive way that you could was the only logical thing to do. But treatment was starting soon. I was scared as hell for it. But again, I took that step back and asked myself why. Why was I fixated on the bad news of having cancer at a young age? When, if you take a step back and think about it, having it then meant I was able to get more treatment, I was able to recover quicker and get through all of this in one piece. So maybe the bad news was I was 17 and I had leukemia, but the good news was I was 17 and I had leukemia. Why was I, indeed, why does everyone look at chemo as something that just brings pain and misery, when wasn't it also a medication? The very thing that could get me better? There was going to be pain in my future in the next few weeks and years. But knowing that, accepting that, didn't push me into despair because I knew it and because I could acknowledge that I would be going through it. It prepared me. And it meant, and I knew, that in the future when I did go through that, I'd be focusing on the big picture. That they wouldn't be doing this to me unless they thought it could possibly help. Why was I fixated on that 10 to 20%? Wasn't that all a chance? The very thing I had at that point. And then I decided then to always do that. It's because of that attitude that even after 8 rounds of intense chemo, 1 fatal dose of radiation, a relapse, and 2 bone marrow transplants, that I'm still here. Now, when I tell other people this, I always tell them that what I did, it wasn't inspirational. It didn't require some huge willpower or some insight. It's not anything that they couldn't have done. Because all I did were a few simple things that you guys already do. I took a step back. I questioned what I was doing. And then I asked myself, what's the best thing for me going forwards? So making that choice to live life in the most constructive way wasn't the brave or courageous thing to do. It became the only logical thing to do. And that's something anyone can do. At any time, too. Because those simple few steps, they haven't just helped me get through cancer treatment. It's helped me achieve my dream of studying medicine. It's helping me do research and get insights in how to end this disease and human suffering. And most importantly, it's helping me lead a richer, more meaningful, fulfilling life too. And some of those things, I know, can probably help you guys. For example, when I came out of my treatment, I was a shadow of my former self in all ways. I lost my fitness, my looks, my autonomy, sometimes even my brain power, and I hated that. But what I hated more was no matter how much I tried, no matter how many times I tried to make some progress, it seemed like something to get back to what I was before. I hated the new normal that had been imposed on me. And the feeling of losing my old me, my competence, my ability, that's something that some of you may be feeling, if not overtly and at the back of your minds. Now for me, having that monkey of cancer in the back of my mind for so long, that brought me for a long time into a really depressive state. Now we're hearing a lot more about depression these days, and it's great that we're getting more awareness, but a lot of people don't know how it feels, how it can really affect you. When you're depressed, for whatever reason, and there are many reasons you can be depressed, the whole world seems dark, dreary, and pointless for so long that it drains you. In all ways. Everything you do becomes hard. Even waking up, everything you do seems meaningless. And even the things you used to love fail to make you happy anymore. You feel numb. But every now and then, you do something that makes you feel again. You get back on your feet. And usually, that's when you're going out with friends, when you're seeing other people, when you're talking to someone about it. As Carla said, often it can be your GP or your psychologist who can do that, but it can also be your friends, or your parents, or me, or your children as well. Whenever I got to that point, I did exactly what I did with cancer. I took a step back, analyzed what I was doing, and just asked myself why I was feeling that way. And when I did that for this issue, I saw what was really getting me down at that time was my lack of competence. But first of all, I could still get back to my old self. And I could still improve myself in other ways as well. And secondly, why did I even think that being less competent in the first place was limiting me when there were so many other things I could do and so many other ways I could make an impact and lead a more meaningful life than the old me could ever have achieved? So now, the physical limitations that all of us here may be facing, yeah, they suck. and they make it harder to lead a healthy life. But we can work around them if we think of other ways of approaching them. Now for me, I was often physically stopped from training and exercising and doing all the things I used to do before. But with all the medications and stuff I was on, it became even harder to do all those things. But I really wanted to. I wanted to be like the old me. I wanted to go play basketball. I wanted the old looks. I wanted to see the results right now. So I'd go on these crazy diets, restrict what I was eating. I'd start lifting weights and running sprints and doing whatever I can to get through that. Then when the results didn't come, after a while, I just gave up and thought, why even bother? Some of you may be thinking the same thing. I mean, you're too old, right? Too fragile to do that stuff. But when I take a step back and ask myself why nothing was working, I realize that even perfectly healthy young people can't do those things, let alone me. But why was I, and why do all people think that it's hard to lose weight and stay healthy? Because it really isn't. I mean, instead of doing the usual crazy diets and radical exercise programs, why not just change how I looked at eating and exercise? How I did that to control how I ate? Well, I took a step back and looked at why I was eating so much. And I realized that often I wasn't really enjoying the last few bites of my meal. I was just doing it to finish off that plate. And I think we've all been brought up on that idea. You better finish off your plate because look at all those starving kids. They're not getting anything. You are. But though I liked eating, I didn't like those final few bites. I was just doing it as a chore to finish it off. So I decided next time I'd dish out just that tiny bit less. And I did that, and the key here was I did this over time. I did this week by week. I didn't even notice it, but within 4 or 5 months, I was eating half of what I used to, even on steroid medications that makes you hungry. And it was easy too. I was still eating what I wanted to eat. But though I enjoy chocolate and the odd burger, we don't want to be eating that all the time, right? So I thought about why I like eating those things too. I mean, I do like the taste, and I do enjoy it, but what I didn't like was the fatty feeling, the indigestion that I sometimes got, the sugary feeling that you always get. So I decided instead of buying and go to town on that chocolate bar or dessert after a meal, instead I'd just share one with my friends every now and then. Or I'd take a bite of theirs and save some money too. Sorry, friends. And sugar, it is actually an addiction. Like you're physiologically programmed to do that. Back in the old days when we didn't have, good meals and things right at our table, we were told pretty much when we could by our brains to eat as much as we could. So how do you break that habit? Well, using that knowledge may make it seem hard to do that, but in truth, if you only stop eating that Tim Tam after dinner or whatever you do for 1 or 2 days, you lose the craving. And so I did that, and would you know it, like within a day or two, I was just eating whatever I wanted, and I ate healthily too. In terms of exercise, instead of always jumping into this crazy regime that my body couldn't handle, I decided to just start small and, most importantly, do the things I loved. I loved playing basketball, but instead of doing these crazy sprints and drills that I was doing before, I did it in a way that I actually liked doing it. I played casual basketball with my friends. I loved my fishing too. And so I started walking down to the local river and just looking at the river, looking at the different spots of the mangroves where the weed patches were, and I'd do that every day, scout out my next fishing spot, and every now and then fish too. I didn't even notice it, but I was walking 3 or 4 Ks a day, and it became easier for me to do that too. You guys could do that with your golf, with whatever passion you enjoy. You can walk to the corner store instead of driving there and pick up that newspaper in the morning too. And it'll be easier too. You'll love it after a while. When I made that choice to go bigger and to go to the next point, I chose to bike. I mean, why not? I'd done the whole bike ride before I was sick, and it was really fun when you did it with mates and with my dad as well. And it's low impact. A lot of you guys here can do that too. And you can do it in front of your TV on an exercise bike, which is great. But again, time was the key here. I got out of chemo and I wanted to ride, but I knew now that I should build up small and then go harder. So I got on that exercise bike, I did 5 minutes a day, maybe 10 minutes the next day. And then eventually, I signed up for that 200k bike ride, and I did it. And you know Michael Dale? Some of you may know him. He did it too. And I'm not saying you're old, Michael, you do have a great heritage. But I know there were many other people, 50, 60, and even 70-year-olds who were doing that ride. They were doing it faster than me too. So, as doctors, we're told to tell people to make a lifestyle change, but even that implies huge effort on our parts. Just those small changes in your mindset, and importantly, giving it time and giving yourself some slack to have that odd cheat day or that odd dinner when you have your families or friends' weddings and stuff like that, not berating yourself. That helped me lose 23 kilos in over 6 months without even knowing it. And I was getting healthier and fitter in the process too. But despite the fact that I was getting healthier and healthier, I often wondered what it was all for. I mean, I was still suffering, I was still getting treatments even years after my second bone marrow transplant. But even worse, I could see that there was so much suffering going on in the world, and it seemed like nothing was changing. The cogs of the wheel kept turning and people kept getting crushed. I believe in young people, confusion about our purpose and our reason for being in this world causes us to have the highest rates of depression and suicide. Our efforts, in whatever they may be it career or in helping those people, they often seem futile or pointless. We don't have power at that point. But in older people, in some of you, a major cause of depression and just angst is regret. That idea that what you've done in life hasn't been worthwhile or hasn't been enough. That your life hasn't been meaningful. Some of you may be feeling it now, some of you may face it later. But us, our young people, and you alike, despite our lack of power and your supposed decline in ability, we still have a lot to give to this world. And you guys especially are able to do that, no matter what people think about you, or whatever you think about yourself. And the best way to give our own lives meaning, I believe, is to help others. Now, you guys being financially secure are especially equipped to do that. Giving doesn't need to be in the form of money, and it need to come at a sacrifice at your part either, I want to add. But when you do give to the causes that matter to you, but ensure that it goes to a charity or an aid organization that is effective and makes your dollar go the furthest. Now, first of all, many have this misconception that aid and charity, they spend too much money on administration and stuff like that, and some of them do have to in order to exist, but there are many which can save and extend people's lives for a fraction of $1, such as the Deworm the World Foundation initiative. And many do crucial research, which leads to the betterment and life-saving procedures that help millions, such as the Leukemia Foundation. I'm a walking, talking example of that. Do your research. Get on the computer and find out the most impactful charities, and don't give me that excuse, oh, we're too old for that stuff. I have many 60, 70, 80-year-old friends who are on the internet, and it's not only allowed them to learn more, it's enriched their lives because they're so much more active because of it. That research that I was telling you about doesn't take too much time either. There's already a website which ranks charities in order of their effectiveness in terms of life saved, and it's called www.givewell.org. And it can tell you everything you want to know about giving most effectively. But donating money and giving charity needn't come at a sacrifice, and it need to be associated with that too. There are many ways you can give to others without loss, and indeed, there are many ways that we can profit from it too. One example is a concept called microfinance. Now, for something where you become a bank and give out loans to people. I'm talking $25 at a time, small amounts. But these are for people who can't break that poverty cycle because they have no collateral or no means of securing a life-changing loan. The rates of repayment on these loans are 99% plus. They're safer than a home loan for banks. You know why? Just because they run so well and just because they're so effective. And just because they're so grateful. And they are. You receive messages from them personally, and every time I see one in my inbox, I know that me just being on this earth is the reason why someone out there is alive and happy. How much more meaning in your life can you want? That's special. But you can also profit and give charity without loss in other ways. The emergence of social enterprises, companies that exist for profit but whose profits go to a good cause. You can invest in them, and you can also make everyday purchases with your items. There's a good example, Thank You. You can buy hand soap from them, and every cent of profit that they make goes to expanding their range and also towards giving hand sanitation and helping people in slums in India and other third world countries. You can invest in those companies too at the startup level, and you get returns on them that are great. And similarly, buying products from brands that do more for charities, even writing letters to them, urging them to do more. Like, that'll encourage more and more to do that more kind sort of thing. And you can also take these ideas of giving without loss and giving with profit back to your companies and businesses. It's been shown that 83% of consumers will choose to buy products of equal quality and value from a business or brand which gives more, or which seems to care. So it's in businesses' best interests to give, and to give their money, give more than their competitors, and make it known that they do that too. Even for large multinational corporations and governments, developing the world's poorest, including the poorest communities here in Australia, leads directly to profits for us. I mean, the emergence of the middle class, which was talked about before, and the emergence of the developing world economies, they're just examples of that. Because guess what people do when they escape poverty and reach that middle class? They buy our services, they hire our professionals, they buy our products and our resources, and the trade deal with India and China, and India buying our uranium and China buying our beef, is just proof of that. Giving doesn't just help others, it helps you as well, in many ways. When I take a step back and think about it, I realize that helping others, it's the most sustainable way of being happy yourselves. Because unlike money, power, fame, women, the feeling of putting a smile on someone's face, that can never be taken away from you, and that will never seem hollow or pointless either. But the concept of giving, it needn't be restricted to just financial means of giving either. Helping out your children and grandchildren, being there for them, I'm sure you all know, is great. But teaching them to be better people means that your giving spirit and your values will continue on even after you're gone. Getting involved in the community, being a positive influence to younger minds and helping them in tough times by volunteering and doing other things like that. That does the same thing, and it also gives you something to do in the day. And just smiling at everyone, just performing these small acts of kindness, they can make someone's day. They can change their life, possibly. There are many stories of people on the verge of suicide who decided not to do that because just someone smiled at them. And I remember one day, I was making a late night run to Woolies, and I was getting a bit of lettuce and stuff for my tacos, and there was this checkout lady. She was an elderly lady. She was bagging everything without saying, "Hi, how are you?" She had this grumpy look on her face. And so, when it was my turn to check out, I pulled out this fluffy, flower-like lettuce. I held it up to her and I said, "This is for you, darling." And you know what? She broke out into laughter and said, "That just made my night." And her smile That made mine. So you know what? Helping others and being healthy isn't as hard as you think. Everything I said and talked about came from small changes I made to my mindset and how I looked at things. Not only is it easy, it's something anyone can do at any time. So let's you and I make this pact today. Let's refuse to let our health, our age, and our circumstances limit us. Let us make the choice to lead a meaningful, healthy life. Not only is it easier than we think, it's also the best thing we can do for ourselves. And you all have that power to make that choice. And I hope what I've said has helped you and has convinced you to make that. So, thanks guys.